The night sky above the small town of Millbrook exploded with brilliant orange light. What most people thought was a meteor turned out to be something far more extraordinary. A sleek, silver spacecraft crashed into the woods behind the old Miller farm, sending shockwaves through the quiet community. Jake Morrison was the first person to reach the crash site. The 25-year-old mechanic had been driving home from his late shift at the auto repair shop when he saw the strange object streak across the sky. Unlike everyone else who ran away from the explosion, Jake's curiosity got the better of him. He grabbed a flashlight from his truck and ventured into the smoking wreckage. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. Among the twisted metal and glowing debris, two figures lay unconscious. They looked almost human, but their pale blue skin and silver hair immediately told Jake they were not from Earth. Both appeared to be young females, wearing torn metallic clothing that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. The taller one had a deep cut on her forehead, while the smaller one clutched what looked like a damaged communication device. Jake's heart raced as he realized he was looking at actual aliens. His first instinct was to call the authorities, but something stopped him. These beings looked so vulnerable, so helpless, lying there in the wreckage of their destroyed ship. Within minutes, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. Military trucks, government cars, and local police surrounded the crash site. Jake quickly hid behind a large tree, still watching the unconscious alien girls. He witnessed soldiers roughly handling the two beings, loading them onto stretchers without any care for their injuries. "Subjects secured," one soldier spoke into his radio. "Taking them to the containment facility for interrogation and experimentation." The word experimentation sent chills down Jake's spine. These weren't just visitors from another world. They were someone's daughters, sisters, perhaps friends. They had faces that showed pain and fear even in unconsciousness. How could anyone think of experimenting on them? As the military convoy disappeared into the night, Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He couldn't let those innocent beings suffer at the hands of people who saw them only as test subjects. The smaller alien girl had dropped something during the transfer, a small, glowing crystal that pulsed with soft light. Jake carefully picked it up, feeling its warm energy against his palm. The next morning, the town buzzed with rumors and speculation. Government officials quickly covered up the incident, claiming it was just a weather balloon crash. They set up a perimeter around the area and warned everyone to stay away. But Jake knew the truth, and he couldn't stop thinking about those two helpless girls. He spent the entire day researching the location where the military had taken them. Using his connections from his days in the National Guard, Jake discovered they were being held at a classified research facility about 50 miles outside town. The place was heavily guarded and designed to keep things in, not out, that evening. Jake sat in his small apartment, staring at the alien crystal. It seemed to respond to his touch, glowing brighter when he held it. Somehow, he felt a connection to the beings it belonged to. He could almost sense their fear and confusion. They were alone in a world that saw them as threats rather than visitors in need of help. The local news reported that the weather balloon incident was completely under control, and life in Millbrook should return to normal. But Jake knew nothing about this situation was normal. Two innocent lives hung in the balance, and everyone who could help had either turned their backs or been ordered to stay away. Late that night, Jake made his decision. He couldn't live with himself knowing those girls were suffering while he did nothing. He had no military training for this kind of mission, no special skills for breaking into government facilities. He was just a small-town mechanic with a conscience that wouldn't let him sleep. Jake began planning what seemed like an impossible rescue mission. He studied satellite images of the facility, mapped out guard rotations, and gathered supplies he might need. The crystal continued to pulse in his pocket, almost as if it was encouraging him to take action. As he prepared for what might be the most dangerous thing he'd ever attempted. Jake couldn't help but wonder about the girls' story. Where had they come from? Why had they crashed on Earth? Did they have families somewhere among the stars, waiting for them to come home? One thing was certain: everyone else had turned their backs on these helpless alien visitors. The government wanted to use them, the military saw them as potential weapons, and the townspeople were too afraid to care. Jake Morrison, a simple mechanic from a small town. Was their only hope? The crystal pulsed again, and Jake felt a strange sense of determination wash over him. Tomorrow night he would attempt something that could land him in prison for the rest of his life. But some things were more important than personal safety. These girls needed someone to believe they deserved kindness rather than fear, understanding rather than experimentation. Jake looked out his window at the stars, wondering which one had been their home. Soon he would either be their salvation or another person who had failed them. But unlike everyone else, at least he was willing to try. Jake spent 3 sleepless days preparing for the rescue mission. He used his mechanical skills to modify his old truck, installing a quieter engine and reinforce the back to create a hidden compartment. The alien crystal had become his constant companion, pulsing with increasing urgency as if sensing the approaching attempt. On a moonless Thursday night, Jake drove toward the government facility. His heart hammered against his chest as he parked 2 miles away from the perimeter fence. He had studied the guard schedules and knew there was a 15-minute window when the eastern section would be unmonitored. It wasn't much time, but it was all he had. Wearing dark clothes and carrying a backpack filled with basic medical supplies, Jake approached the facility on foot. The crystal in his pocket grew warm and began pulsing faster as he got closer. Somehow, it seemed to be guiding him toward the building where the girls were being held. The fence was topped with razor wire, but Jake had come prepared. Using wire cutters and thick gloves, he created a small opening and crawled through. Security cameras swept the area in predictable patterns, and Jake moved between their blind spots like a shadow. Inside the facility, the crystal's pulsing became almost frantic. Jake followed its guidance through sterile hallways lined with locked doors. The place felt cold and unwelcoming, more like a prison than a research center. He could hear voices coming from various rooms, speaking in clinical terms about specimens and test results. Finally, the crystal led him to a heavily secured door marked with warning signs. Jake's lockpicking skills from his rebellious teenage years came in handy as he carefully worked on the electronic lock. After several tense minutes, the door clicked open. What Jake saw inside made his stomach turn. The 2 alien girls were lying on metal tables, connected to various machines and monitors. Tubes and wires ran from their bodies to complex equipment that beeped and hummed constantly. Both girls were conscious but looked incredibly weak and frightened. The taller one, who appeared to be around 20 in human years, had tears streaming down her pale blue face. The smaller one, who seemed younger, was trying to comfort her companion despite her own obvious pain. When they saw Jake, their large, silver eyes filled with confusion and hope. "I'm here to help," Jake whispered, though he wasn't sure they could understand English. He quickly began disconnecting the monitoring equipment, trying not to trigger any alarms. The crystal in his pocket now blazed with bright light, and both girls' eyes widened when they saw it. The smaller alien girl reached out with a trembling hand and touched the crystal. Suddenly, Jake could hear her voice in his mind, speaking in perfect English despite her lips not moving. You came for us." Her telepathic voice was filled with wonder. "My name is Zara, and this is my sister Lyra. We never thought anyone on this planet would show us kindness." Jake's eyes widened at the mental communication, but he didn't have time to be amazed. "We need to get out of here fast," he replied both aloud and in his thoughts. "Can you both walk?" Lyra, the taller sister, struggled to sit up. "They have been taking our blood and studying our bodies for days," she communicated weakly. "We are very tired, but we must try to escape. They plan to separate us tomorrow for more invasive procedures." The thought of these gentle beings being torn apart for science made Jake's determination even stronger. He helped both girls to their feet, supporting them as they stumbled toward the door. They were wearing simple white hospital gowns that barely covered them, so Jake gave them his jacket and an extra shirt from his backpack. Moving through the facility with 2 weak alien girls proved much more challenging than entering alone. They had to stop frequently for the sisters to rest, and every sound in the hallways made Jake's heart skip. The crystal continued to glow, which helped light their way but also made them more visible. They were almost to the exit when alarm sirens suddenly filled the building. Red lights flashed everywhere, and Jake could hear guards shouting orders throughout the facility. Someone had discovered the empty containment room. This way, Jake urged, pulling the girls toward an emergency exit he had spotted during his reconnaissance. But the door was locked from the inside, and his lock-picking tools weren't working on this more advanced system. Zara placed her small hand on the electronic lock, and Jake watched in amazement as it began to glow with the same light as the crystal. The lock clicked open immediately. "Our people have certain abilities with technology," she explained through their mental link as they rushed outside. "That crystal you carry contains some of our ship's energy. It helps us connect with Earth machines." Outside, searchlights swept across the compound as guards poured out of buildings. Jake guided the sisters toward the hole he had cut in the fence, but their weakened condition made them move slowly. The sounds of pursuit were getting closer. "Go through the fence," Jake instructed. "I'll hold them off and follow in a moment." But both alien girls refused to leave him behind. "We stay together," Lyra insisted, her mental voice showing fierce loyalty. "You risked everything to save us. We will not abandon you now." Jake's heart swelled with emotion at their dedication. These beings, who had been treated so cruelly by his own species, still believed in standing by someone who had shown them kindness. They managed to crawl through, the fence opening just as the first guards spotted them. Shouts erupted behind them as Jake helped the sisters run toward his hidden truck. The girls stumbled frequently, their bodies still weak from days of medical procedures. But they pushed forward with determination. Reaching the truck, Jake quickly helped Zara and Lyra into the hidden compartment he had built. "Stay quiet no matter what happens," he instructed. "I'll get you somewhere safe." As Jake drove away from the facility, military vehicles began pursuing them with sirens wailing. The chase was on, and Jake knew that if they were caught, the consequences would be severe for all of them. But for the first time since the crash landing, the alien sisters had hope. In the hidden compartment, Zara held the glowing crystal close to her chest. Through their telepathic connection, she shared with Jake images of their home planet. A beautiful world with crystal cities and peaceful people who valued kindness above all else. "Thank you," both sisters communicated simultaneously. "You are the first human to see us as people rather than objects of fear or study." Jake pressed harder on the accelerator as more military vehicles joined the chase. The real adventure was just beginning. The chase lasted for 2 terrifying hours through winding mountain roads. Jake's modified truck managed to stay ahead of the military vehicles, but he knew they couldn't run forever. The sisters remained hidden in their compartment, occasionally sharing strength with each other through soft telepathic whispers that Jake could somehow hear. As dawn broke over the mountains, Jake made a desperate decision. He remembered his grandfather's old mining cabin deep in the wilderness, a place so remote that even local hunters rarely found it. If anywhere could hide them, it would be there. Jake turned onto a barely visible dirt trail that wound up into the dense forest. The pursuing vehicles couldn't follow on the narrow, rocky path designed for mining equipment decades ago. After another hour of careful driving, they finally reached the abandoned cabin. The wooden structure was weathered but still solid, sitting beside a clear mountain stream. Jake helped Zara and Lyra out of their hiding place, and both girls immediately felt stronger in the natural environment. The fresh mountain air seemed to revitalize them in ways the sterile facility had prevented. "This place feels alive," Zara communicated, touching the bark of a large pine tree. "Your planet has such beautiful energy when it's not covered in metal and concrete." Lyra knelt beside the stream and cupped the flowing water in her hands. "On our world, we live in harmony with nature. This place reminds us of home." Jake felt a warm sensation watching them find peace in the simple mountain setting. These beings appreciated the natural beauty of Earth in ways that many humans had forgotten. He quickly checked the cabin and was relieved to find it still stocked with basic supplies his grandfather had left behind. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about his alien guests. Zara and Lyra came from a planet called Etherir, located in a star system far from Earth's galaxy. They were part of an exploration team sent to study different worlds and their inhabitants. Their mission was one of peaceful observation, not conquest or interference. We were studying Earth's environmental systems when our ship malfunctioned, Lyra explained as they sat around a small fire in the cabin. The crash was an accident. We never intended to make contact with humans so directly. The sisters shared stories of their world through telepathic images that took Jake's breath away. Etheria was a planet of floating crystal cities where technology and nature existed in perfect balance. Their people lived for centuries and valued knowledge, art, and emotional connections above material wealth. Your people seem so afraid of us, Zara noted sadly. On Etheria, when strangers arrive, we offer them food and shelter. We try to understand their needs before making judgments. Jake felt ashamed of his own species' reaction to the visitors. Not all humans are like the ones who captured you, he assured them. Many of us would have helped if we'd had the chance. Fear makes people do terrible things sometimes. As the days passed, the sisters' strength returned. They helped Jake maintain the cabin and even showed him some of their advanced knowledge. Zara could purify water instantly using her natural abilities, while Lyra could encourage plants to grow faster and healthier. Their gifts weren't magic. They were evolved capabilities that their people had developed over thousands of years. The peaceful time at the cabin couldn't last forever. On their 5th day there, Jake's old military radio picked up government communications about the search for the escaped alien subjects and their human accomplice. Roadblocks had been set up throughout the region, and search teams were systematically checking every building and hiding place. They will find us eventually, Lyra observed calmly. Humans are persistent when they want something. Jake paced the cabin floor, trying to think of options. They couldn't stay hidden forever, but returning to civilization meant certain capture. The sisters would be taken back to that horrible facility, and Jake would probably disappear into a government prison. That evening, as they discussed their limited choices, Zara made an announcement that surprised everyone. We have been thinking about our situation, she began through their mental connection. There might be a way to contact our people and arrange for rescue. Lyra nodded and pulled out the damaged communication device she had been carrying during the crash. If we can repair this transmitter and reach our ship's emergency beacon, we can send a distress signal to Etheria. Our people will come for us. Jake examined the alien device, which looked like a combination of crystal and advanced electronics. What would we need to fix it? Certain earth metals and a power source strong enough to reach space, Zara replied. The components exist on your planet, but obtaining them without being detected will be very difficult. The sisters explained that their people had strict rules about non-interference with developing civilizations. A rescue mission would need to be done secretly without revealing themselves to Earth's governments or military. If they could send a signal, help would come within days. Jake thought about the challenge ahead. They would need to venture into populated areas to find the materials, risking capture with every step. But it was their best hope for getting the sisters home safely and ending this dangerous situation. There's an electronics supply warehouse about 30 miles from here, Jake said after considering their options. And I know where to find the metals you described. If we plan this carefully, we might be able to gather everything in one night. Lyra placed her hand on Jake's shoulder, and he felt a wave of gratitude and affection through their telepathic link. You continue to amaze us with your kindness, she communicated. Most beings would have abandoned us by now to save themselves. Zara added her own thoughts. When we return to Etheria, we will tell our people about the human who showed us that not all species fear what they don't understand. You will be remembered as a bridge between our worlds. As they prepared for what might be their final mission together, Jake realized that meeting these alien sisters had changed him forever. He had learned that intelligence and kindness could exist in forms he had never imagined. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and these gentle beings had given him a glimpse of what peaceful contact between species could look like. The next morning, they would risk everything on one last desperate attempt to get the sisters home. But whatever happened, Jake knew he had made the right choice. Some things were more important than personal safety, and friendship knew no planetary boundaries. The crystal pulsed softly in Zara's hand as she worked on the communication device, its light offering hope that soon these lost visitors would find their way back to the stars. Under the cover of darkness, Jake and the alien sisters made their way toward the town where the electronics warehouse was located. They had spent the entire day planning their mission, identifying exactly what materials they needed and the fastest route to obtain them. Zara had used her abilities to modify Jake's truck, making the engine run completely silent and somehow making the vehicle less visible to electronic detection systems. The sisters' advanced knowledge proved invaluable in preparing for what would be their most dangerous operation yet. "The warehouse should have everything we need for the transmitter," Lyra communicated as they approached the outskirts of town. "But the power source will be much more challenging to acquire." Jake had been thinking about that problem all day. "There's a solar energy research facility about 10 miles north of here. They have experimental battery systems that might provide enough power for your signal." The town was crawling with military personnel and government agents. Roadblocks had been set up at every major intersection and helicopters with searchlights patrolled overhead. Jake carefully navigated through back streets and industrial areas. Avoiding the main roads where checkpoints waited, they reached the electronics warehouse after midnight. The building was surrounded by a chain-link fence, but getting inside proved surprisingly easy with Zara's ability to manipulate electronic locks. The sisters moved through the warehouse like ghosts, quickly locating the specific components they needed for their communication device. "These Earth technologies are more advanced than we expected," Lyra observed as she examined various electronic parts. "Your people have great potential for peaceful space exploration if they can overcome their fear of the unknown." Jake felt pride in humanity's achievements, but also sadness knowing that fear had prevented his species from making friends with these remarkable visitors. While the sisters gathered materials, he kept watch for security guards and government agents, who might be searching the area. Their luck held as they completed the warehouse operation without being detected. But the solar facility would be much more challenging. Unlike the warehouse, the research center had active security systems and round-the-clock personnel. They approached the solar facility just before dawn, when the guard shifts changed and security would be briefly relaxed. The experimental battery systems were housed in a separate building behind the main complex, making them easier to reach without confronting too many people. "I can disable their security cameras," Zara offered, placing her hand on a control panel outside the battery storage building. "But only for a few minutes before they notice the system malfunction." Jake nodded and prepared to move fast. They needed one of the large battery units, but these devices weighed several hundred pounds and were connected to monitoring systems. Getting one out without triggering alarms would require perfect timing and a lot of luck. As Zara worked her technological magic, the security cameras went dark throughout the facility. Jake and Lyra rushed into the battery storage room and quickly identified the most portable unit that would meet their power requirements. Using a hand truck from the facility, they managed to load the battery and wheel it toward their vehicle. They were almost back to the truck when bright lights suddenly flooded the area. Security guards had discovered the camera malfunction and were conducting a manual search of the grounds. Shouts echoed across the facility as flashlight beams swept in all directions. "Stop right there!" a guard yelled as he spotted the three figures loading equipment into a modified truck. "This is private property." Jake's heart raced as more guards converged on their position. They were so close to success, but capture now would mean the end of everything. The battery was loaded, but they still needed time to escape. Lyra stepped forward, and suddenly every electronic device in the area began malfunctioning. Security. Radios filled with static, flashlights flickered wildly, and the facility's alarm systems went completely silent. In the confusion, Jake started the truck and they sped away into the pre-dawn darkness. "That was incredible," Jake communicated to Lyra through their telepathic connection. "How did you do that?" "Our people learned long ago that technology should serve life, not control it," she replied. We can encourage electronic systems to behave in ways that promote harmony rather than conflict. They drove back to the mountain cabin as the sun rose over the horizon. Behind them, they could see helicopters beginning to search the area around the solar facility. The government forces were getting closer, but they had everything needed to complete the communication device. Back at the cabin, Zara worked frantically to assemble the transmitter while Lyra connected the powerful battery they had acquired. The alien crystal that had guided Jake to them now served as the central component of their interstellar communication system. The signal will take approximately 6 hours to reach our people, Zara explained as she made final adjustments to the device. Once they receive our distress call, a rescue ship can arrive within 2 of your Earth days. Jake felt mixed emotions about the approaching rescue. He was thrilled that the sisters would finally be able to return home safely, but he also realized he would probably never see them again. Over the past week, these remarkable beings had become like family to him. Lyra seemed to sense his thoughts. "You will always be welcome on Etheri," she communicated warmly. "Our people would be honored to meet the human who showed such kindness to strangers from the stars." As the communication device powered up, it filled the cabin with a soft, musical humming sound. The alien crystal blazed with brilliant light, and Jake could feel energy flowing through the air around them. The signal was transmitting, carrying their call for help across the vast distances of space. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the mountain air, and through the cabin windows they could see military vehicles making their way up the old mining trail. The government forces had finally tracked them down. "They're here," Jake said grimly, checking his watch. "The signal has been transmitting for only 20 minutes. It needs hours to reach your people." Zara and Lyra exchanged worried glances through their telepathic connection. They were so close to freedom, but the device needed time to complete its transmission. If the military destroyed the communicator now, their rescue would never come. "We have to protect the signal," Lyra decided. "No matter what happens to us, this message must reach Etheri." Jake looked at these brave sisters who had endured so much suffering but still fought for their freedom. He made his own decision in that moment. "Hide the communicator and yourselves," he instructed. "I'll go out and buy you as much time as possible." As military vehicles surrounded the cabin and soldiers took positions, Jake walked outside with his hands raised. He was ready to face whatever consequences awaited him, knowing that he had given 2 innocent beings their best chance at going home. The crystal continued to pulse inside the hidden communicator, sending its desperate message across the cosmos to a world where kindness was valued above fear. Jake stepped out of the cabin with his hands raised, facing a dozen military vehicles and armed soldiers. The commanding officer, a stern woman with colonel's insignia, approached him with her weapon drawn but not aimed directly at him. "Jake Morrison," she called out. "You're under arrest for theft of government property and aiding the escape of classified research subjects. Where are the alien specimens?" "They're not specimens," Jake replied firmly, despite the weapons pointed at him. "They're intelligent beings with names and feelings. Zara and Lyra deserve to be treated with respect, not locked up like lab rats." Inside the cabin, hidden beneath loose floorboards, the communication device continued its vital transmission. The sisters could hear everything happening outside through their telepathic connection with Jake. They wanted desperately to help him, but revealing themselves now would ensure the signal never reached their homeworld. The colonel studied Jake for a moment. "You've caused a lot of trouble, Mr. Morrison. Those beings could be dangerous. They possess abilities we don't understand." "The only dangerous thing here is how we've treated them," Jake shot back. "They crashed here by accident. They never tried to hurt anyone. All they want is to go home." As the soldiers prepared to search the cabin, something unexpected happened. Several of the younger soldiers began lowering their weapons and looking uncomfortable. One of them, a sergeant who couldn't have been older than 25, stepped forward. "Colonel," the sergeant said hesitantly, "maybe we should listen to what he's saying. I've seen the reports from the facility. Those beings never showed any aggressive behavior. They were actually trying to help the medical staff understand their injuries." The colonel turned sharply toward the sergeant. "Stand down, Sergeant Williams. You don't have all the facts." But Williams wasn't alone. Another soldier, a female corporal, spoke up as well. "Ma'am, with respect, I've been thinking about this mission all week. We're supposed to protect people, not imprison visitors who haven't committed any crimes." Jake watched in amazement as more soldiers began expressing doubts about their orders. These young military personnel had joined the service to defend their country and help people in need. Hunting down frightened alien visitors didn't align with their values. "What if it was us?" asked another soldier. "What if we crashed on their planet? Would we want to be locked up and experimented on, or would we hope someone would show us kindness?" The colonel's authority was crumbling as her own troops questioned the mission. She spoke into her radio, requesting backup and instructions from higher command. But Jake could see uncertainty in her eyes as well. The soldiers' questions were making everyone reconsider what they were really doing. Inside the cabin, Zara and Lyra felt a surge of hope as they listened to the humans debating the ethics of the situation. These soldiers were demonstrating the same capacity for empathy and moral courage that Jake had shown from the beginning. "Some of your people do understand," Lyra communicated to Jake through their mental link. "There is hope for friendship between our worlds if there are more humans like you and these soldiers." The standoff continued for nearly an hour as the colonel waited for new orders. During this time, several soldiers approached Jake and quietly apologized for the situation. They had been told the alien visitors were potentially dangerous, but seeing Jake's passionate defense made them question everything they'd been ordered to believe. "Sergeant," Williams finally made a bold decision. "Colonel, I respectfully request permission to speak with Mr. Morrison privately. If those beings are really as peaceful as he claims, maybe there's a better solution than imprisonment." The colonel reluctantly agreed, perhaps hoping to gather intelligence about the aliens' location. Williams approached Jake and spoke in a low voice that wouldn't be overheard. "I have a younger sister," Williams confided. "She's studying to be a veterinarian because she wants to help creatures that can't help themselves. When I think about those alien girls being treated like lab animals, it makes me sick. Is there really no other way to handle this?" Jake looked into the young soldier's eyes and saw genuine compassion. "They just want to go home," he repeated. "They have families somewhere in the stars who are probably worried sick about them. All we have to do is let them contact their people for rescue." Williams nodded slowly. "What would they need to do that?" Before Jake could answer, a new development changed everything. A bright light appeared in the sky above the mountains, moving in ways that no Earth aircraft could manage. The object descended silently toward their location, its surface gleaming with the same crystalline technology Jake had seen in Zara's communication device. "What the hell is that?" the colonel shouted, raising her weapon toward the approaching craft. "It's their rescue ship," Jake said, with relief flooding his voice. The signal worked. "They're going home." The Etherian vessel landed gracefully in the clearing beside the cabin, its arrival causing no damage to the surrounding forest. The ship's surface seemed to shimmer with inner light, and Jake could feel the same peaceful energy he had sensed from the sisters. A door opened in the ship's side, and 3 tall figures emerged. They had the same pale blue skin and silver hair as Zara and Lyra, but wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of living starlight. The leader of the group approached the gathered humans with calm dignity. "Greetings, people of Earth," the Etherian leader spoke in perfect English, his voice carrying telepathic undertones that all the humans could somehow understand. "I am Ambassador Theron. We have come for our young explorers." The colonel kept her weapon trained on the newcomer, but Jake could see fear replacing her earlier confidence. "You're trespassing in restricted airspace," she announced. Though her voice lacked conviction, Theron turned his serene gaze toward her. "We wish only to retrieve our people and depart in peace." They were explorers on a mission of observation, not conquest. Their presence on your world was accidental. Inside the cabin, Zara and Lyra finally emerged from their hiding place. They ran toward their rescuers with joy radiating from their telepathic communications. The reunion was touching even for the watching soldiers, many of whom lowered their weapons completely. "Please," Zara addressed the gathered humans through their mental link. Do not judge all of our people by this difficult first contact. We are a peaceful species. We hope someday our worlds can meet again under better circumstances. Lyra approached Jake and placed her hand on his arm. Through their connection, she shared one final message filled with gratitude and hope. You have shown us that your people are capable of great kindness. That knowledge will guide our future interactions with Earth. As the Etherian family prepared to board their rescue ship, Ambassador Theron turned to address the military personnel one final time. Your young human here, he said, indicating Jake, has demonstrated the noblest qualities of your species. He will always be welcome among our people. The colonel finally lowered her weapon completely. Looking at her soldiers, who were all watching the peaceful aliens with wonder rather than fear, she made a decision that would change everything. Let them go, she ordered quietly. This isn't what we signed up for. As the Etherian rescue ship prepared for departure, Jake felt a mixture of joy and sadness. He was thrilled that Zara and Lyra would finally return home safely. But he knew he would miss these remarkable beings who had become such important friends in such a short time. Ambassador Theron approached Jake personally before the departure. Young human, he said with warmth in his telepathic voice, your courage and kindness have created a bridge between our peoples. Because of your actions, we now know that not all Earth inhabitants respond to the unknown with fear. The ambassador reached into his flowing robes and pulled out a small crystal device similar to the one that had guided Jake to the sisters. This is a gift from our people, he explained. It will allow limited communication across the vast distances of space. Perhaps someday, when both our worlds are ready, we can establish formal, peaceful contact. Jake accepted the crystal with trembling hands. Will I ever see them again? He asked, glancing toward Zara and Lyra, who were saying goodbye to some of the soldiers. The universe has many surprises in store, Theron replied mysteriously. Those who show kindness to strangers often find themselves welcomed in unexpected places. Meanwhile, the military personnel were having their own profound realizations. Sergeant Williams and several other soldiers approached the alien sisters with respectful curiosity instead of suspicion. For the first time, humans and Etherians were interacting as equals rather than captives and captors. I'm sorry for how our government treated you, Williams said directly to Lyra. Not all of us would have made that choice if we'd understood the situation. Lyra's telepathic response touched everyone who heard it. Your apology heals some of the pain we experienced. It gives us hope that future meetings between our peoples will be based on friendship rather than fear. The colonel, who had been quietly observing these interactions, finally made a decision that surprised everyone. She approached Ambassador Theron and offered a formal military salute. Sir, she said respectfully, I want to apologize for the treatment your people received. We acted out of fear instead of seeking understanding. If there's ever a chance for our species to meet again peacefully, you'll find Earth has people willing to choose friendship over suspicion. Theron returned the salute with equal respect. Your words carry hope across the stars, Colonel. Perhaps the future holds opportunities for both our species to explore the galaxy together as allies rather than strangers. As the goodbyes continued, Zara and Lyra spent their final moments on Earth with Jake, through their telepathic connection. They shared images and memories from their time together, the fear and pain of their capture, the wonder of discovering human kindness, and the hope they now carried for future contact between their worlds. You saved our lives, Zara communicated, tears of gratitude flowing down her blue cheeks. But more than that, you saved our faith in the possibility of peaceful contact with other species. Lyra added her own message. When we return to Etheria, we will tell our people about the human who saw past our differences to recognize our common hopes and fears. Your story will become part of our cultural memory. The crystal communication device that Jake now carried began to pulse softly, responding to the sisters' presence. Through it, he could feel the emotional connections that bound not just him and the aliens, but all the humans and Etherians who had chosen understanding over fear. As the rescue ship prepared to depart, Ambassador Theron addressed all the humans present. Today, representatives of two very different worlds have chosen cooperation over conflict. This moment will be remembered on Etheria as the beginning of hope for peaceful relations with Earth. He paused and looked directly at Jake. We have established a monitoring protocol to observe Earth's development from a distance. When your people are ready for open contact, when kindness like yours becomes more common than fear, we will return for a formal diplomatic relations. The Etheria ship began to glow more brightly as its departure systems activated. Zara and Lyra took their places aboard the vessel, but maintained their telepathic connection with Jake until the very last moment. Goodbye, dear friend, came their joint message. Thank you for showing us the best of humanity. We will carry your kindness with us to the stars. The ship rose silently into the night sky, its crystalline surface reflecting the moonlight like a star being born. Within moments, it had disappeared among the real stars, leaving only the memory of its peaceful presence. In the days that followed, Jake's life changed in unexpected ways. The government initially wanted to prosecute him for his actions, but the testimonies of the soldiers present that night told a different story. The incident was ultimately classified, but Jake was quietly cleared of all charges. Colonel Martinez, the commanding officer who had chosen to let the Etherians leave peacefully, was transferred to a new position in the military's developing extraterrestrial contact protocols. Several of the soldiers requested transfers to work with her, wanting to be part of future peaceful contact efforts rather than military operations. Sergeant Williams left the military entirely and became an advocate for peaceful space exploration, inspired by his encounter with beings who valued understanding over conquest. His sister completed her veterinary studies and began working with wildlife rehabilitation, motivated by her brother's stories about showing kindness to frightened, vulnerable creatures. Jake returned to his life as a mechanic, but everything had changed. The crystal communication device occasionally pulsed with messages from the Etheria, not words, but emotional impressions of friendship and gratitude that reminded him his actions had mattered across the cosmos. 6 months later, Jake received the strongest signal yet through the crystal device. Images flooded his mind showing Zara and Lyra back on their beautiful homeworld, healthy and happy. They had become ambassadors for peaceful Earth contact, teaching their people about human potential for kindness and cooperation. The final image they shared showed a magnificent crystal city where a new building was under construction. Through their telepathic message, Jake learned it was being built as an embassy for future diplomatic relations with Earth, a place where humans and Etherians could meet as friends when both species were ready. That night, Jake stood in his backyard looking up at the stars with new understanding. Somewhere among those distant lights, two alien sisters were looking back toward Earth, carrying with them proof that kindness could bridge any gap. Even the vast distances between worlds, the universe had become a much less lonely place. And Jake Morrison, a small-town mechanic who had chosen compassion over fear, had played a part in bringing two civilizations closer to the dream of peaceful contact among the stars. The crystal in his pocket pulsed one final time that evening, carrying a message of hope that stretched across the galaxy. Friendship knows no boundaries, and kindness is the universal language that all intelligent beings can understand.